Richard.
Hello, Heather.
It's number 4.
It is, yeah.
Number 4, Wiggly Podcast. And this week we've got Farmer Phil coming in. We've got, a customer has emailed us in about bokashi. You know, we spoke about that last week. And we've got Alison coming back with Plant of the Week. You and I are going to talk about preparing our pond for winter.
Yeah, that's right.
And we've got a book review.
We're going to talk about the Collins Wild Guide about butterflies and moths this week. So a short book, nice little Collins guide book.
Don't do it yet, Rich. Don't do it yet.
No.
And then we've got, as usual, the Monty's Wormcast. So I think we'll get on with today's topics.
Fire away.
The most exciting thing that happened this week has got to be when I went round to Debbie and Gadgets.
Right.
Well, have you met Debbie and Gadget?
No, I don't think,
well,
not.
There's some friends of ours in Preston, and Gadget is, as his namesake is, he is a gadget.
Yeah.
You go in and he films you going up the path, so when you get to the door, he opens the door and says, "Hi, Heather." And when you go in, he's got a massive movie screen, and you sit down and the lights dim, the curtains draw, and popcorn appears automatically. It's fantastic.
That sounds great. Yeah,
and
so right up my street.
Yeah, and in the kitchen there's a fridge for this and a fridge for that. Everything's automatic.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And I go in the kitchen, and there on the wall is a computer screen that is not just a computer screen, it's a touch screen.
Right.
And Debbie orders her Tesco shop, online or whatever it is,
Right.
automatically. Oh, I need a bit of cheese. I'll press the button, and then it adds to the list, and it comes. And on there, she's got iTunes, listen to her music. And I said, "Have you listened to the Wiggly Podcast?" And she said, "No, what's a podcast?" And you're going to be a podcast addict, and I am a podcast addict. So I said, "You just press this button here, press subscribe." Did it with my finger. And down came the Wiggly Podcast in her kitchen. Well, I was just jumping around with glee because all the rest of our Amdram group came round. And there was you, Rich, wittering on about bumblebees. And then Farmer Phil's reports. And everyone was like, "Wow, how can this be?"
Yeah.
It was
That's
really...
must have been really good.
Because we're trying to do a Christmas carol in our local church at Christmas. Right. So we were just there to watch this DVD.
Okay, so everyone had a good night anyway.
Absolutely.
Good. What else were we going to talk about? I think we were going to talk about the Gorgeous Gardens initiative, weren't we?
That was interesting, wasn't it? We had a visit from Sarah Ayling from Hereford Nature Trust.
Yeah.
And she spoke to you. So what was that about?
It's a neat initiative that's been coordinated through the Nature Trust right the way across the UK, Wildlife Trust, Nature Trusts. What they're doing is they're looking for gardens, suitable gardens, right the way across the UK to open for open days during the summer next year. And then any of the proceeds that are generated through visitors going to those gardens are then donated to the Nature Trust. So really it's Nature Trust's charities that they are generating income for themselves.
Yeah, but I also like the fact that they call it Gorgeous Gardens, but they're specifically looking for gardens that are good for wildlife.
They are. They're looking for exactly that, looking for gardens that are rich in wildlife, rich in biodiversity.
If we were in a town, I'd say just up our street.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but we're not, so I'll say just down our lane.
Yeah, that's that's very good.
Thank you, Rich. Farmer Phil has driven in. It's over to you, Rich.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Rich. How are you?
No, very well, yeah. It's good to see you again. What have you been up to this week?
Well, more planting, really. I mean, it's the time of year when we plant all our winter crops. The grass seed is planted, then the winter barley, and then the winter wheat.
Do you think the seasons have changed a bit? I mean, would you be able to plant slightly later than, say, you would have done 10, 20 years ago?
It's quite interesting. 10, 20 years ago, there would have been much less winter cropping. The majority of it would have been planted in the spring.
Right.
Basically because the ability to grow the varieties, the weed killers and so on work, and the varieties themselves will grow nicely. They bred good varieties to do that, and they'll survive the winter and so on.
I was talking to him, Rich, about the fact is that sometimes he uses pesticides.
Yeah.
And, having the normal argument with him.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And he was talking about how he's now applying them in the autumn, weren't you, Phil?
Well, there are some things that I discovered that Heather thought that I did, that I didn't actually do. In the course of an argument. The example given was that Heather assumes that because we're not an organic farm, that I apply insecticides all the time as a sort of, if I can't think of anything else to do, we'll slip a bit of that on.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is that on a cereal crop, we only apply one pesticide in the autumn, and therefore the effect of insecticides on the bugs and creepy crawlies throughout the spring and summer months is nil. The insecticide that we put on is an aphicide, and it clears up the last aphids of the season, which are carrying a virus that the cereal crop gets that we can't treat. It's incurable, and it's devastating to yield.
Right.
So the obvious way to do it, and it's nice and cheap as well, is to just clear up the last few aphids which are carrying the virus when the crop is young, and thereafter the crop doesn't catch the virus over the winter because there are no aphids, obviously, because it's winter time, and by the springtime it's too late for it to affect the crop.
Right.
But you see, one of the biggest problems and arguments that he and I ever had is slug pellets, because slug pellets and worms are an utter disaster.
Really,
yeah. But the other morning I cycled to meet him and he took me off to a field.
Right. As you do. Does that bring back memories of old?
Not really, no. Oh. And we went off to this field and I wondered what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And in fact he inspected the crop and announced that he didn't need to put any slug pellets on. So I was really pleased with that.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's really changed, hasn't it?
It has. I suppose the first thing I should say is that there are slug pellets and slug pellets. The best slug pellets are devastating to worms and snails, hence the reason they're good on slugs.
Yeah.
The lesser ones, given that conditions are dry, are less harmful to worms, and they will do the slugs in.
Right.
But by far the best way of doing it is if we can get the ground consolidated enough so that the slugs can't move around and get the crop away early, we don't need to put any on at all.
Is that an initiative that other farmers would share with you, though? I mean, are other farmers conscious of that?
I think that most farmers in this day and age, profits are not what they were, and that if you've got no worries about the environment at all, just the sheer cost saving makes most of them think, well, if I don't need to do it, I won't do it. I think that nowadays most farmers are a lot more responsible about what they do, and they think about it a lot more than they did 5 or 10 years ago. And the cost implication helps that process along.
One of the things that interests me is we always hear about the no-dig method in the garden. You know, it's best not to dig because worms make their burrows and they actually turn the soil for you. They're really good as ploughs.
Yeah.
And yet in the field, you know, you are ploughing, aren't you?
We plough because our soil seems to benefit from being ploughed, and it's an effective means of reducing the weed population and the volunteer, in our case, grass and cereals population. There is currently a lot of work going on, and it's quite a popular alternative not to plough, but we feel that it doesn't work as well on our type of soil because there's a lot of stone in it, and the position that we are in the country means that our harvest is later. The non-ploughing methods involve shallow cultivation to encourage all the weed seeds to chit, and then you spray that off with glyphosate, quite an environmentally friendly chemical. It's not a problem, but it's systemic, so you spray off the flush with that, cultivate it again and drill it. In our area, sort of where harvest is a bit later, we don't very often get the time to have that cultivation and chit and spray, which is one reason. The plough is very effective at killing grass weeds because if you plough them in properly, it kills them.
And you like doing it, don't you?
I like ploughing.
Sits on it. He just sits on it all day. He's totally
it's a good
happy.
opportunity to clear your mind.
It is quite therapeutic.
It's very therapeutic. There's nothing like the smell of freshly turned earth, as any gardener will tell you.
And where do the seagulls come from, Phil?
Sadly, from the local tip these days, I'm led to believe. There's a bit of competition for the poor old seagulls these days because the buzzards have discovered that they like worms, and we've got a lot of buzzards. Buzzards and seagulls don't mix very well.
No, that's interesting.
They don't seem to like each other much.
So who wins? The buzzards?
The buzzards, usually.
Yeah.
The only thing that annoys the buzzard, and it's not that he loses, but he gets fed up with it, is if the crows come and mob him.
Start mobbing him, yeah.
And that
the seagulls
him.
don't mob the buzzards.
No, the seagulls just disappear when the buzzards arrive.
I think on that note, Phil, you can buzzard off.
Thank you very much.
We've had a great response to our bokashi article, and lots of people actually started using bokashi in their composters. So I've got an email here from Bridget Purchase, and she says, I've read about your bokashi bins and I'm very interested in purchasing the value pack. One problem though, while I am fully converted to recycling, my husband is proving a tough nut to crack. When you say you can empty a full bin after 2 weeks and dig the contents into the garden, where they'll compost amazingly quickly, what sort of state will the contents be in? I.e., will they resemble their original selves? And how quickly will they compost down? Interesting.
Well, it is interesting, of course, because bokashi really kind of pickles the waste
Yeah.
in the bokashi bucket. It doesn't really start to break stuff down until it's in the soil, does it?
No, so it does look like the stuff that you put in.
Except it's not smelly, is it?
No.
And it's slightly shriveled and a slightly different colour. It
Yeah.
doesn't lose its colour, doesn't it?
But essentially, if you can't bear the food that you put on your plate, then you're not going to bear the food that's in your bucket.
No.
But if
no.
you can bear the food that's on your plate, it'll be fine.
It'll be fine. It's, in short, it's not a rancid mess in the bottom of the bucket, is it? All rotten and smelly.
Hopefully not.
No.
Liquid feed, that can be smelly, mine. So that can be an issue. But essentially, you put that down the drain. So I don't think your husband's really going to get involved in that. You're
No,
going to open
no.
the tap and
I
it's
think
going to
it'll
go
be
down
fine.
the drain. And certainly compared to a normal dustbin bag, you know, your husband's going to put out that bag
Yep.
sometime. So there's going to be that waste in there. Well, this way is miles more hygienic. So I'd say go for it.
Yeah, definitely. Go for it.
Good luck. Bring him round. Well, Rich, it's time for Alison's spot. It was really interesting to hear about those Zwart balls. Or what were they, Al?
Zwoorbless.
Zwoorbless, yeah.
Chocolate sheep.
Yeah.
Conjures up all sorts of ideas of sheep melting in front of fires and stuff.
What stage are they at now then, Al? Have they been to the RAM?
Yes, they've just gone into the RAM. They're probably on second week with Wilf from Bill.
Wilf from Bill. Oh, Wilf from Bill.
Yes, he's the most adorable ram.
Is he?
Yes, he really is.
And he is a purebred Zwoorbless.
Yes, he is, yeah.
And tell us about this Maida Visna.
Oh, MV.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, all pedigree flocks should be MV accredited. It takes over a year to become MV, and you have to have...
what is it?
Well, it's a blood test. You have to have a blood test done. It's something to do with a disease on the brain, which they get, which all sheep in the next, I think it's the next 5 or 10 years, have to be MV accredited.
So the point is that you've got that now.
Well, I've got another test in February, then I should be totally MV accredited, which makes mine worth quite a bit more money, basically.
Yeah. But also adds to the paper pile of what farmers have to do, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. You get all sorts of certificates
Yes,
and things.
it's absolutely awful. They fill in lots of pieces of paper, Rich, and then they get money.
Yeah.
What a pain for you, Al.
Yeah.
It's all good fun, though.
Yeah. The sheep, where have they come from originally then?
They originate from Holland.
Really?
Yeah.
So did you bring them over or not?
Well, some clever person brought them over and started it off in the UK 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And then it's grown and grown from there.
And how many have you got?
29.
29.
Yeah.
And how much land does it take to keep these?
Well, because a parent's farm, they have other sheep which aren't MV accredited. They have to be kept on their own, causing a bit of a problem at the moment. They have to have their own fields, which has taken over 2 farms. Which is all good fun, and they have to be double fenced, and they're not allowed to share the same water tanks, and all sorts of rules and regulations like that.
Should we ask her, Rich, if this
interesting.
is a commercial flock or a hobby flock?
Yeah, you ask.
Alison, is this a commercial enterprise or a hobby flock?
Well, it's it's sort of my pension fund flock.
Oh,
That sound
much more exciting
the
than
pension
the
flock. Very good.
than the
Yeah.
Prudential.
That's right. Yeah, most people go with London, whatever they call
Yeah,
them.
what was it? Standard Life.
Standard life. Yeah,
No,
Alison's got a
she's
herd of
going with
chocolate sheep.
swat balls. Anyway, moving on to plant of the week. Tell us what you've got there, Al.
plant of the week, cowslip this week.
Now, cowslips, it's a bit boring, isn't it, love?
Bit boring? not at all, no. I mean, cowslips, they used to be quite plentiful around in the 1940s, between the 19 and the 1970s. They were completely wiped out almost in this country.
Really?
Yes. It's not until they started doing roadsides and things and scattering more seed around that those cowslips are beginning to become more popular now.
They're beautiful,
Yeah,
though.
they're absolutely
Well, why are they
lovely.
called cowslips? Is it just because they're found in meadows, or I suppose it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it must be. I mean, the
Pasture land, cowslips.
there's two
It's your take on it anyway, isn't
there's
it?
two
Yeah.
names for them
There must
that
be
they
a
used to
reason.
call them cow slop and cow pat. And this probably generates from where they like to be found in a grassland meadow
By a
with-
cow
by a
pat.
cow pat.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I found out that they used to be called Our Lady's Keys, and that was because it was thought that they were found on the ground where St. Peter dropped his keys. You know, the one on the way
Oh,
into
right.
heaven. Him.
Ah,
That's
interesting.
Yeah.
Now, and the other thing is, apparently, if you plant a cowslip upside down, it grows red. It's not true. It's not true. But that's
I
a
didn't
widespread
think you'd be
belief.
telling people that.
It's not
They'd
true.
be ringing out saying,
That's
why
good
are
bit
they
of
green?
advice there.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is one of the
You've got
first
to
signs of spring, though, wasn't it? Traditionally, you know, the cowslips were out, and the, you know, the
Yeah,
time,
and you
know,
see them all along
winter's
the
coming to an
hedges
end,
and
and
things.
yeah, that's right.
If you want to plant them, in the wild they're often found in real clumps, aren't they?
Oh yeah, masses of clumps, and that's because they self-seed quite readily. If you collect the green seed and scatter it onto your lawn, the next year you'll have a mass of cowslips. But the thing is, when you collect the seed, like we have to collect the seed to grow plants for future use.
Yeah.
That seed's quite hard to germinate. But in green seed, it just comes out really well.
Because
Yeah.
your seed is coming from SSI meadows, isn't it? Often.
No, well, it shouldn't come off Triple SI meadows. No.
What do you do? How does it work?
We plant 50 metres of cowslips and then harvest off our own beds.
Right.
Yeah, which come off meadows which we have permission to collect from.
I see. Because the seed can be traced back, so the last thing that you want anyone to do is to go and, well, it's illegal, isn't it, to
Yeah,
actually go
absolutely.
and dig up a cowslip or anything like
Yeah,
that.
they are protected, yeah.
But the ones that you've got there, that one is a genuine native.
Genuine native cowslip, that one, yeah. You do get others that, you get the oxlip, which are crossed between a primrose and a cowslip, and they're a bigger version of the cowslip, bigger flower. Looks exactly like a cowslip, but grows a lot taller.
And I suppose if you weren't interested in the provenance, then that just gives you a bit bigger display in the garden,
Yeah,
does it?
absolutely, yeah.
Is that a naturally occurring specimen, or is that something that you have to, you know, that's
Well, if you
you
plant them
design?
together, you'll get a cross. Yeah.
Right, that's
Ah.
I
interesting.
believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we should say how high they are. How high do they grow to? Because otherwise, you know, in
Um,
case anyone doesn't know.
They go about 30 centimetres in height.
And then they've got like a rosette around the bottom. The leaves
Yeah, the
don't
leaves
keep up with
don't-
them, do they?
No, they don't. They just grow outwards along the grass. Yeah.
And when would you plant it?
Well, all year round, really. It's a spring flowering plant, so you can plant it now, and then it'll flower in the spring.
It's a fairly early flower.
It is, I think, isn't it one of the earliest
yeah.
of the
One
wildflowers
of
to
the
come?
first, along with the primrose, as it comes along. You can have a second flush of flowers late into the August, September time.
Double your money there.
Double your
Ruth.
money, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Al. Hope Zwarbler sheep go well.
Thank
And
you.
I'd like to keep up to date with those, really.
Yeah,
Really
yeah.
like the
yeah,
idea of
yeah.
chocolate
Well, are we
sheep.
talking to Alison again next week?
I think we may do.
Yeah. No, but I think we'll probably end up having some sort of plant of the week, will we?
You
I
should
think
have
we
to
will.
buy a Swartbless sheep to go with your chocolate dog and the chocolate cat.
And I expect you're willing to charge me some exorbitant price for a
Absolutely.
Zwarbler. Thank you very much, Al.
Thank you.
Rich,
Yeah.
let's dive in, shall we?
Yeah.
It's pond preparation for the winter. Get
Very
it?
good,
Dive
very
in.
good. Yeah, let's dive in. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell us all about it.
There's a few things you can do. October's a good month because a lot of amphibians, frogs and newts are just starting to think about hibernating. So whilst they might be in the pond, it's not too late to disturb them. It's a good time to take out a lot of the leaf litter that's going to go into the pond. A lot of leaves are obviously coming off the trees now, so it's a good time to scoop those off the surface. Good to have a few. Bit of detritus in the bottom of the pond is useful, but you don't want too many, because too many leaves are in the pond, they start to decompose and they can create toxic gases and whatnot. So it's good to keep the leaves at bay.
Our pond has got lots of oxygenating plants, tons
it is,
of it.
Lots of Elodea, isn't it?
Does that matter? Or?
No, it's good to have lots of Elodea in the pond. Elodea is a really good oxygenator, and it provides a fantastic medium for inverts like dragonfly nymphs and damselfly larvae and stonefly larvae. And
so just leave that?
Yeah, leave it. Or you could perhaps take some out in preparation for next year. If your pond is completely full of the stuff, choked up, then perhaps this is a good time of year to take it out. If you're going to leave it, obviously it's going to proliferate more in the spring, so you're going to get even more next year. So if you're thinking about taking stuff out, this is probably a good time of year to do it. When you take stuff out, a good guide is to just leave it on the edge of the pond for a day or so, and it gives the opportunity for anything that's living in there to crawl out and then back down into the pond.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and then after you've done that, you can just take it down and put it on the compost heap.
Now then, Fishborn.
Yeah, Fishborn by name.
What about fish? We don't want them. We don't.
No, we don't.
You love them, you do.
I do love
you
fish.
do.
Yeah, I do. I'm quite passionate about fish. But interestingly enough, in a wildlife pond, fish aren't such a good thing, because they do have a propensity to eat your tadpoles and your newt larvae. It could affect it. If you want fish and wildlife, then perhaps it's best to have two ponds. Have a pond specifically for wildlife and one specifically for fish, and the animals will soon suss out which one they need to spend their time in.
They definitely will, won't they?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so we've sort of cleared the leaves out of it, and we've made sure that anything that's left in the pond has had a chance to crawl back into the pond.
Yeah.
Sorted out our oxygenating plants. It's now time for winter. What do? Throw a net over it, or?
No. The nets aren't such a good thing, even though the sentiment, the idea, putting a net over a pond to keep the leaves off.
Yeah.
In theory, that's a good idea, but you've got problems. You're stopping birds from getting into the pond to drink and to bathe.
Right.
And also, there's every chance that birds can get tangled up in the net and die as a consequence.
So, what are you going to do instead then?
It's a bit more labour intensive, I know, but the best thing is to use a net to scoop the leaves off the top of the pond.
Right.
As soon as you've got a few leaves floating on the top, just pop out, for a couple of minutes and scoop them off, take them off, put them on the compost heap.
Lovely. So we're ready for winter then?
That's about it. Yeah.
Thank you, Rich. It's time for this week's book review. This week we've got The Collins Wild Guide to Butterflies and Moths by John Still. You've had a good look at this one, haven't you, Rich?
Yeah, these are great books. I really like these Collins guide books, especially now that they use photographs, so it's so much easier to just flick through the book and identify what it is that you're looking at. But there's also stuff in the beginning of the book that gives you a taster of other things. It asks what are butterflies and moths, the importance of butterflies and moths in the ecology. And it also gives you a key. There's a key at the beginning of the book and tells you how to use the book, which is really important. It really kind of simplifies the whole process of identifying what you're looking at, which is what you want. When you're wandering about in the countryside, you want to be able to grab your little book and have a quick squiz and see what that animal is that you're looking at.
Yeah, and I think to have the moths in amongst it all is really good, because they are much less romantic than butterflies, but we see so many more moths all the time that you can use the book more often because the moths are in amongst it all.
Absolutely. It's interesting though, isn't it? People often think moths as being fairly dreary and less interesting than butterflies, but some of the species of moths we've got are absolutely amazing. It's just that we tend not to see them. Obviously, they're most species of moths are nocturnal. Not all of them. You get,
we had that
cinnamons
hummingbird
and whatnot.
in
Hummingbird
the
moth
summer.
and our valerian out here. Yeah,
it was really exciting, wasn't it?
Fantastic. Those are beautiful things. It's amazing to think that they fly all the way up from Northern Europe as well.
Amazing.
They kind of fly across our English Channel and come out the
and they even go
country.
they even go up to Scandinavia.
Yeah, it's a long old way for a little animal to fly, isn't it?
Totally.
But it is well worth having. I think if you were going to, if you're keen on walking in the countryside, then it's definitely worth taking something like this with you, because
Do you think it's a bit big?
probably not really. You tend to, if you're going out for a nice walk, it'd be a bit big for just a casual stroll with the dogs, perhaps.
Yeah.
But if you're going out walking proper, you've got your rucksack with your water in and whatnot. It's nice to be able to pop one of these either in your rucksack or in your pocket. The reason this is fairly substantial compared to some guidebooks is that there's pretty much all the species that you're likely to encounter are in this book. So
All the UK species.
all the UK species, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's 256 pages, and there's a moth or a butterfly to each page. And then, practically speaking, it's covered with a waterproof cover.
That's right, it's got a nice waterproof cover. So, it's a pretty robust little book.
Right, Rich, we need a rating.
Yeah.
How would you rate butterflies and moths on the chocolate scale?
The chocolate scale. Explain the chocolate scale.
I don't know the chocolate scale.
No.
Okay, from 1 to 5, bad to good.
Okay.
Number 1, Hershey's.
Brilliant.
Number 2, Nestle. Number 3, Cadbury's. Number 4, Galaxy. Controversial, but that total smooth, milky feeling. And top of the tree is, without doubt, go on that skiing holiday. Remember that taste. Purple wrapper, Milka.
Oh, excellent.
Come on, rating.
I'd definitely say it's a Milka.
Milka.
It does exactly what it says on the cover. It's a handy, neat little book. Yeah.
That's not Milka. Milka is
It's the same colour as the Milka wrapper as well.
handy little book. Does what it says on the cover.
Yeah.
That's Cadbury's for me.
It is.
Cadbury's.
That's what we're. Cadbury's. No, it's not.
Cadbury's.
God, it's-
It's the last word on it. You can't give the first book a Milka.
Perhaps you get better books on butterflies and moths that aren't guides, aren't field guides.
Okay.
But as a field guide, definitely a Milka.
It's time for Monty with his Wormcast.
The Wiggly Wormcast podcast by Monty, a weekly fact on worms. The largest earthworm ever found was in South Africa and measured 6.5 meters from its nose to the tip of its tail.
It's the end, Rich,
That's
of
it.
number 4.
Shame, isn't it? All
Yeah.
good things must come to an end,
Yeah.
I suppose.
But I really do feel we've tasted lots of chocolate today, don't you? You've never heard of the chocolate rating, have you?
No. I think you'll be surprised how few people have.
Really?
Yeah.
Actually, I think you'll find it's an insight to women, Rich.
Do you think so?
I do. I think if you
Very
ask
possibly.
99.9% of all women how they rate anything in life,
It's
they will
all
rate it on
As
the
a chocolate.
chocolate ratings. So remember, number 1,
Yeah.
Hershey's.
No good.
Yeah, you don't. Do you like Hershey's?
No, it's rancid.
Number 2, Nestle. Number 3, Cadbury's. Good, solid company. Use a lot of farmers' milk round here.
Right.
Yeah, based at Marlborough, Leominster.
Right.
Number 4, I can hardly talk about it without swallowing. Galaxy. And number 5, we can't say it. Just don't say